So a story in Dublin and, a story that didn't happen essentially, but it is just so frightening to think what could have happened because, of course, we saw what could have happened in a previous incident similar. There was a shooting, or at least an attempted shooting, that was only averted because the gun jammed in a pretty popular Dublin restaurant, which we're not going to name. But two gunmen ran in and basically tried to take on and take out a rival as he sat eating a meal.
Yeah, I mean, in this happened on at 6 o'clock in the day. The restaurant be very well known. We're not naming it because it's not their fault. Obviously, these things happen. But yeah, those sort of incidents happening in a packed place like that, it is almost an act of terrorism, really, isn't it? When you consider ordinary people would have seen it. What happened was these two gunmen, or a gunman at least, and an accomplice, burst into the restaurant. Obviously knew who they were looking for. There was two men sitting at a table. They approached them. One of the men was subsequently pistol whipped and a gun was held to the head of the other man. And the belief is the gun may have jammed before the gunmen fled the scene. So, of course, yeah, it would bring back echoes of the Browne Steakhouse murder, where Jason Hennessy Sr. was shot dead in a packed restaurant in front of not just his friends and family, but other ordinary people who were just having a meal for
and
Christmas.
People who remain traumatised by that, and staff members, and that business is gone. Browne Steakhouse no longer exists as Browne Steakhouse, all because of this. But I suppose it's to do with this ever more chaotic criminal that is out there. There is a number of almost complex feuds happening within a particular area of West Dublin. We've spoken about some of them. We're going to try and put a bit of order on it, actually, so as we know which one we're dealing with. But you have, and we know some of the individuals who would have been on either side of this, chaotic, involved in the drug trade, violent, out of control.
Yes, totally out of control.
And we don't even know what they're fighting over. Is it even as legitimate a reason to argue as a drug debt or a debt or somebody owed money? A lot of this is almost personality driven.
Yeah, so all of these people come from the broader Clondalkin area, let's put it that way. Both the suspected gunman and the targets. That was an area, obviously a huge area of Dublin, that was largely controlled by two criminal operations that really worked side by side. The Kinahan cartel, in particular, the kind of offshoot of the bomber Kavanagh wing, really, with people like Pater Keating, who were all based in Clondalkin. They all had a very significant operation, and the family drugs gang as well, who still have a very, very significant operation on the ground. But the Kinahans and the family, they weren't rivals as such. They weren't in conflict. They would work together. Certainly the family were supplied at times by the Kinahans, so they had their own routes. So they were really the big players in that area. Now, things have changed. As we know, the Kinahan network on the ground, while they may be involved at a high level in terms of drug trafficking, they don't have those sort of people. And in the last number of years, a large number of criminals now in their sort of late 20s, which all of these guys are suspected of being, have emerged. They aren't names that maybe ring out in the way the previous generations did. I mean, last year there was a guy called David Callan who was convicted of being a member of an organised crime gang in that area called the Callahan Organised Crime Group.
Who has heard of them?
Exactly. And they, again, while they did work with the family, it's believed they really operated totally independently. So some of these criminal organisations may be wholesale drugs, but they've managed to make a lot of money. There are complex feuds going on in the sort of broader Clondalkin area. One of them that is involved, associates of John Gilligan have been involved, and there's been a number of violent attacks. But there's also the Emergence.
And quite a lot of unreported incidents of kind of shootings and, cars been burnt out. It's like as if you talk about Pater Keating, of course, is serving a sentence for directing a criminal organisation. The Kavanagh organisation has been dismantled in that area. The family are very much in control, but under pressure, and were caught up in that ghost network encrypted phone hack. Big high-profile arrests earlier this year, and files with the Director of Public Prosecutions. So there's all that going on. But it feels as if, with these incidents we're talking about, there isn't an adult in the room.
No, but I mean, these are young men. And while you might say there's not an adult in the room, and that may be true in terms of their sophistication, certainly the two men that were the target of the attempted hit, both of them have come before the courts. One of them is still being dealt with for very, very serious crimes. The other,
what we know about one of them is that he certainly has in the past operated as a debt collector. He has travelled outside Dublin in order to collect the drug debt of pretty, minor amount considering what occurred. Threatened people with death, threatened to come back and burn out their house, was caught in the process of that. But nonetheless, that's just a snippet, a little tiny window into the sort of stuff this individual is doing, demanding money with menaces. The kind of stories we've talked about and how do families cope with it. In the case of that particular incident outside the city, he got the wrong house altogether.
Yeah.
And a completely innocent family were targeted. And were no doubt absolutely terrified.
Yes, and the people that the suspected gunmen have also been are part of a criminal network, and they have also come before the courts for a range of serious crimes. So it's a volatile situation, and there are a lot of volatile situations bubbling along in West Dublin, in that part of West Dublin that we don't hear about. There's also the emergence of very serious players. I spoke to Eamon not so long ago about Sam O'Sullivan, I suppose he's gone down famously now as the posh boy EncroChat phone dealer, and
a protege of Christy Kinahan Senior himself.
Yeah,
somebody who started out very early with links to Christy Kinahan when he would have been just leaving Ireland, and has a long history and connection with the Kinahan organisation, but was last caught up in selling basically EncroChat phones in France.
Yes. But as part of that cab case, we also heard about how a couple of West Dublin criminals from that part of the world were stopped, and they had, Sam O'Sullivan's details were found on them. So these people have these deep connections. It's a huge area of the city. When you talk about Clondalkin, you're also talking about the surrounding areas, and that part of West Dublin's huge population, quite a young population, and there's big money to be made. So we are definitely seeing the emergence of, I suppose, the next generation of gangland criminal. It's interesting, I think last week the guards were, there was put out about how they managed to intercept a number of hit attempts. One of them, which is coming before the courts now as well, so we can't get into it, it's very serious in West Dublin as well. So the number of gangland murders has really, really dropped. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But this is one part of the city where that...
Not for the want of a lot of them trying, because, you go into a restaurant, you put a gun to somebody's head, you pull the trigger and it jams.
Yeah, of course. And but it's certainly that part. There is a number of these feuds bubbling along. The family, as a criminal organisation, have really avoided that type of violence for the most part. But what we have seen in some of the...
And yet are deeply responsible for a lot of the criminality in that area. And I do think we should get a little bit deeper into all of this, because this is the next story, really, the next big story. You spend decades working on who's who, and certainly the criminal networks, they can be taken down or they flee. But these are the ones that we really need to be watching. These gangs and these crews and these communities that are suffering under them.
Of course, and where you look at the family that they've managed to stay one step away from gangland murders, they still have their hands in some of them in terms of supplying people, in terms of okaying shootings. And that certainly has happened in recent times. Again, not to get into the specifics, because there are charges coming on some of those cases.
All right. Well, look, we'll leave that there for the moment. Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.